Hello and welcome to Gloucester. I'm Anne Bartlett, a Blue Badge tour guide. The city of Gloucester was founded by the Romans in the mid-1st century. That's nearly 2,000 years ago. So Gloucester can boast nearly 2,000 years of fascinating history. There's so much to see and do here. In this video, we will explore some of its history, heritage, and interesting and important people that have made a contribution to local and national life. I hope that this video will inspire you to come and visit Gloucester for yourselves and discover some of its fascinating landmarks and its hidden gems. Talking of hidden gems, there was an unusual church spire behind me as I was walking up Westgate Street, and I wanted to point that out to you, but the sun was shining on the camera lens and obscured it. Here it is, the striking landmark, which is the tower and spire of St Nicholas Church, that was badly damaged in the 17th century during the Civil War. Despite being repaired, it was eventually deemed unsafe and the top was removed, and the shortened spire decorated with the interesting crown effect. Also, it may appear not quite vertical, and you'd be correct, it does lean a little bit to the right. We'll turn back now and continue up Westgate Street. Oh, that's looking down College Street towards the Cathedral. And there's the upper part of Westgate Street. I said earlier that the city was founded by the Romans, and underneath our paved streets lie the remains of the walled Roman fortress, so you're very much walking in the footsteps of the Romans. We're just getting to another striking landmark right at the top of Westgate Street, and that is St Michael's Tower, and I'll tell you more about that a little later. Look down and you'll find this elaborate cross in the ground, which marks the meeting of 4 roads. There's Westgate Street, which I've just walked up, Northgate Street, Eastgate Street, and Southgate Street. Along here in Southgate Street was the Roman Forum. During excavations in 1969, archaeologists found parts of a statue that was likely to have been Emperor Nerva on horseback. The fragments of that statue were pieced together and a replica was made, and here it is. Emperor Nerva turned this fortress into a colonia, which was the highest status a Roman town could attain. He called it Colonia Nerviana, after himself, Glavensis. That was a huge honour for the town, but it was rather long and cumbersome, so it was shortened to Glevum, and you will see references to that name today. By the time of the Norman invasion, led by William the Conqueror in 1066, Gloucester was a royal borough as well as an important commercial centre. In those days, kings were peripatetic, and meetings of the Great Council, equivalent to Parliament, were held in Gloucester annually. And on one occasion, in 1085, William the Conqueror commissioned the most comprehensive survey of his new kingdom, and we still have a copy of that survey listing all the landholdings in the country. It's become known as the Domesday Book, and it's such an important book that it's kept in our National Archives in London. Royal charters were bestowed on Gloucester, giving it privileges equal to those of Winchester and London, making it one of the most important cities in England. Now this is the most spectacular building in Gloucester. It's the Norman Abbey Church of St Peter, now Gloucester Cathedral. It's been much altered over the years, as architectural styles change. Nevertheless, it's one of the most magnificent Benedictine churches in England and was part of a Benedictine monastery. The monastery was closed in 1540 during King Henry VIII's reign. Monastic lands and treasures were confiscated. However, the church was saved because it contained, as King Henry VIII stated, monuments of our renowned ancestors, kings of England. The abbey became a cathedral in 1541 and a new diocese was created, the Diocese of Gloucester. Now, using modern technology, we can hover over the cathedral and enjoy an aerial view. This satellite view was filmed in 2017, when the areas around the cathedral were being regenerated to improve its role as a centre for spiritual, civic and heritage activity. You are looking at the south side, and the building works there were transforming a car parking area to an enjoyable green space. The magnificent 15th century tower, with its 4 pinnacles, is visible for miles around. This is the East End, which was remodelled after King Edward II, who was almost certainly brutally murdered in Berkeley Castle in 1327, was buried inside near the high altar. The east wall behind the high altar was taken out and replaced by a spectacular stained glass window, the largest in the country at the time, and is consequently one of the glories of the cathedral today. The building covered by scaffolding, which is set away from the great east window, is the 15th century Lady Chapel, now beautifully restored. You can probably see 3 single-storey buildings to the right of the Lady Chapel. The one in the middle with the big window is the chapter house, which has its doorway along the east walk of the cloisters. Now we're moving to the north side, and surrounding the garden, tucked alongside the cathedral, are the late 14th, early 15th century cloisters, where the Benedictine monks worked and meditated. The cloisters are famous for their fan vaulting, as well as being a film location for Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry in the Harry Potter series. Other film and TV series using the cathedral as a location include The Spanish Princess, which looked at the marriage of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon; Wolf Hall, which charted the meteoric rise of Thomas Cromwell, a close advisor to Henry VIII; and The Hollow Crown, BBC's adaptation of William Shakespeare's play Henry IV, Parts 1 and 2, was filmed inside the cathedral. In the winter of 2008, the TARDIS appeared in the gateway of the tarmac courtyard below. This was for the filming of the Doctor Who Christmas special, The Next Doctor. Gloucester Cathedral is a magnificent building, both outside as well as inside, and once again I do recommend a guided tour to hear more about its rich history spanning over 900 years. Some of the many highlights include the Norman nave with its massive columns and rounded arches. This view is taken looking towards the East End. Behind the main aisle is the statue of Dr. Edward Jenner, a local man who developed the first vaccine in 1796, which immunised people against a disfiguring, contagious and often deadly disease known as smallpox. Look out for this Victorian stained glass window recalling the coronation in 1216 of a 9-year-old prince who was crowned King Henry III following the death of his infamous father, King John. King Henry III's grandson, Edward II, who was murdered at Berkeley Castle, lies buried underneath this beautifully ornate tomb. Around the same time, King Edward III began remodelling the choir and presbytery in the latest Perpendicular style of architecture. This magnificent Great East window was inserted to create an extraordinary space that is both light and delicate, and was at the time of its installation in the 1350s the largest medieval stained glass window in the world. This is the Lady Chapel, completed at the end of the 15th century in the Perpendicular style. Now close to the cathedral is College Court, and along here is a shop which may look very familiar to you. It was used by Beatrix Potter to illustrate one of her favourite stories. She was staying with her Gloucestershire cousin, Caroline Hutton, who intrigued her with the curious true story of a local tailor, whose name was John Pritchard, who was preparing a new waistcoat for the Mayor of Gloucester. Beatrix adapted this story when she wrote an illustrated letter to a little girl called Frida. This letter inspired a book which she called The Tailor of Gloucester, later published by Frederick Warne and Co. Do go inside. There's a lot of lovely souvenirs on display, and at the back of the shop you'll find the tailor's kitchen, as it was in Beatrix's book, and then you'll find out the real tailor's curious story, which she cleverly adapted for her young readers. Charles Dickens was another famous author who visited the city. During his visit he was to hear about another Gloucester character, a very wealthy banker called Jemmy Wood. Look out for this blue plaque in Eastgate Street, where his bank once stood. Jemmy was so wealthy that he was thought to be the richest commoner in the country, yet he looked and dressed like a tramp. He was supposed to have been so mean and miserable that Dickens based Ebenezer Scrooge's character on him in his book A Christmas Carol. Even after his death, Jemmy was to inspire the case of Jarndyce versus Jarndyce in Bleak House, with the protracted and costly settlement of his will. This is St Michael's Tower at the Cross, where the four major roads meet. It's all that is left of a medieval church that once stood here. Because of the city's numerous medieval timber-frame buildings and the fire risk they posed, the tower had a curfew bell, which was rung every night at 8 p.m, telling the townsfolk to put out their fires. The curfew bell continued to be rung right up until the outbreak of the Second World War. By the 17th century, the city walls the Romans built were in a bad state of repair. The English Civil War started in 1642, and after a lot of fierce battles, the West Country had become a royalist stronghold. That is, apart from the city of Gloucester, which supported the parliamentarian cause. Its strategic position alongside the River Severn made it a vital objective for the King's army. The small garrison, under the command of Colonel Massey, were besieged inside the city for a month, before a relief force from London, led by the Earl of Essex, saved the city. These are scenes from a modern-day reenactment of a Gloucester Day parade recalling the lifting of the siege of the city on the 5th of September 1643. In 1649, the victorious parliamentarian army had King Charles I convicted of treason and publicly executed. Shortly after, the monarchy itself was abolished and England was declared a republic. In 1660, the monarchy was restored and King Charles II was proclaimed king. Once King Charles II became king, he took revenge on Gloucester for not supporting his father, and he had the city walls demolished. However, the city walls haven't completely disappeared. Outside Boots the Chemist there's a viewing chamber, and at certain times during the summer you can go down to the Roman level to stand alongside the walls that were built by the Romans nearly 2,000 years ago. The next place I'm taking you to is the Museum of Gloucester and the Tourist Information Centre, which is just round the corner in Brunswick Road. On your way you'll pass a Roman mural depicting life in Gleetham and one representing the English Civil War, and ahead will be the Museum of Gloucester. This is an important stop for every visitor. Just inside the main entrance you'll find the Tourist Information Centre and gift shop. They have a very good website, www.visitgloucester.gov.uk, but it's always nice to pop in for an update on what's on during your visit. In the museum, you'll discover interesting galleries and display cases containing fascinating treasures and pictures to explain more of the city's origins as a Roman settlement, and on through various periods up to Victorian times. There's also a section covering the Civil War. I've given you a very brief introduction to the city, but there's so much more to see here. In my next video, we will visit the quays, a great location for designer and high street fashion brands, and I'll show you around Gloucester's historic docks. I'm Anne Bartlett, a Blue Badge tour guide, and my website is www.touringexplore.com.